How little sense it would make for me to tell you to head over to twitch.tv/day9tv. Well, it does. Because here I am at the NASL Studios. WCS Group B round of 16 just wrapped up, and we have some juicy replays to analyze, literally right from the desk from which they were observed. Welcome to Day 9 Daily number 616, where we learn to be a better gamer. In today's daily, we're going to take a look at that fancy schmancy Phoenix Colossus play used by Chad MF Jones. Actually, I can say fuck, this is my show. By Chad motherfucking Jones, we're going to check out the Phoenix Colossus play style. It's going to be fantastic and nifty and all sorts of things. Part 1, we'll talk about what it is, why it's good, and how it is used. And then in Part 2, we'll talk about its weaknesses, its vulnerabilities, so that way if you steal it and you begin to have them troubles, you know why. Or if you're Terran and you're up against Chad Jones, you'll know how to snap it. Everything looks good. Well, great. We got everyone in the chat. Good evening. I'm so glad all of you are joining me in this late hour of, oh God, what is the time? What time is it? It's 8:37. Normally I'm done by then, but little do you know, the 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. schedule, that is so esports. Let's go ahead and hop into the game. Here we go. Check this out. Whoosh! And watch this. Bam! Look at all that logo coming on up. So, in this first game, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at exactly what the build is. I mean, typically in this matchup, what we end up seeing players do is do the switcheroo, the back and forth between the Colossus and the Templar tech. Going for the Colossus to bait the Terran player, who is, in this game, represented by Muslim. Trying to bait them into overbuilding Vikings, and then we'll switch back to Storm. Storm tends to be the linchpin of Protoss late game. We're going to see Chad Jones do something different altogether. Now, let me just note this. Let me just pause and come back to my prettily make-upped face. That's it, because I'm not actually handling my production. So I'm actually trying to do cues to NASL production. Watch this. Guys, go into the game. Get out of the game. Having a little bit of fun, doing a little bit of the dancing. That's right. Put this overlay up. Put this overlay up. Okay, maybe. Okay, they just won. They're laughing at me. And there it is. This is awesome. I don't even have to hit any buttons. This is cool. So if we think about Phoenix Colossus, before we even step into the game, let me just sort of mentally plant inside you. Having things is way different from getting things. We want to think about the correct way to get to this Phoenix Colossus opening. I've seen some people watch Chad MF Jones and try to snatch the build from his stream, and what often happens is they get too many Phoenixes too early, or they get too many Colossus too late. We're going to see this nice balance of when Chad MF Jones gets them, because late game Phoenix Colossus makes sense. Our Phoenixes absorb the Viking hits, so our Colossus can deal the damage. Phoenix also have the benefit of dealing with drop play. There was a point to all this. You know, I just realized right now, if I'm in my home PC and I do something that looks dumb, it's kind of normal. But when there's like a really nice camera with kind of a pretty clean lens and it's like 1080p, and I have like a tie and makeup and I look dumb, I look way dumber with this level of production. I didn't realize that it highlighted those highs and lows so well. But anyways, the Phoenix Colossus makes sense late game as a composition. The Phoenix is to battle the Vikings to let the Colossus stay in. But in the mid game, they're good at controlling those drops. So with that in mind, we can start to talk about the timings as we head into the game. Production on point. Love it. Love it. All right, so we see Chad MF Jones moving on down with his first scout. I don't read into this too particularly much. I don't think it's that significant of a dealio. But this opening that we're going to see out of Minigun is the interesting, unusual aspect. He's going to go gateway, puts his dudes into assimilator. 3 in assimilator is very common at this point in time. Throwing down the cybernetics core, very common at this time. 3rd gas, very uncommon because you only have 2 in the main base. No, 2nd gas makes total sense for this early phase in the game. We completely get why he would be doing that. However, I will just tell you right now, if you have 2 in the gas, that's plenty to be able to get what you need fast, which would be the mothership core out of this Nexus, which would be the Stalker out of this Gateway, And then soon enough, this warp gate. We don't actually need all of these out immediately, so 2 in gas is sufficient. However, this is an extremely gas-intensive style. Colossus are 200 apiece, Phoenixes are 100 apiece. We're going to be burning through a ton of our gas, so it's going to be no upgrades, no tech, no nothing else but those gas-heavy units. So Chad Jones' minigun actually does get those quite swiftly. Initial Zealot, designed to try to deny this snatching of the Expo. I'm not going to fret too much about the exact mix of how many Stalkers, Zealots, this, that does he get. He's trying to get this expansion AFAP. AFAP, as you'll note, is as fast as possible. So... I'm having a good time. We are having a great time. This play, I'm actually not the biggest fan of, the general Mothership Core scouting. I think it's fine if you do detect your opponent going for an early Reaper play, because as we can see, when the Mothership Core is out, there's still no Marines. Getting a sense of what your opponent is up to, certainly important. I don't mind the scouting. Sending a single Zealot and Stalker out to deal pressure at the front is another nice way to guarantee this scout. If you're just going expand with a single Mothership Core and building no units, I don't like this at all. It's very easy to run into Marines and end up losing yourself the game. So as we continue to step forward, we see Chad Jones doing the scouting. We're not really going to worry about what he sees, because as far as I'm concerned, nothing is different in any of these games. 5:15, or more broadly, whenever the hell you can. That's when the Stargate goes down. Now, as we come back to my beautifully make-up face, thank you. Now we're starting to step into the question of how we would go Colossus Phoenix. Going for this Stargate early on, we're going to get the Oracle, keep our opponent harassed, pin him back, which will buy us time to get up our Colossus. And because the way that we chose to hold him back used the Stargate, we now have an easy transition into Phoenix. We could do something like gateway pressure to keep him back and then follow it up with the robotics facility, but then it's going to be harder to make our Phoenix transition later on. So this is a nice way of aligning all the purposes together, and this is just generally good practice in any build. For instance, if you opened up with a Blink Harass, it's much easier to transition into Templar than to transition into Colossus, because we already have Twilight Council tech. Heading back into the game, we're going to see how Minigun checks out his opponent with a little bit of damage dealing. Alright, I'm going to speed through this portion. Here's the other unusual segment of this. Stalkers are what is being produced, not sentries. We could be potentially up against some early Marine threats, so the Stalkers are going to deal with that. We could be up against some potentially fast mine techs. Stalkers help deal well with that. What are we cutting in all this? Gateways. No gateways at all. Right as this Stargate finishes up, the big cool move that we see Chad MF Jones pull off is the fast robo facility. And there it is. And of course, fast Oracle for harassment. This is where I actually do want to go into the minigun cam, so we can see the things that he sees. Following this, just as generally good practice, will be 2 gateways. But of course, a more important thing is the fact that we will see double assimilator quite swiftly on these geysers. Because again, Chad's entire strategy revolves around gas. And again, I mean, I like to say things like, oh, this build revolves around gas, as though that's, just intuitive and a complete thought. But we're seeing where it is suffering on minerals in the form of gateways. So Minigun's very smart with his positioning, keeping his Stalkers in his main base and his Mothership Core at the front. Also very common is to keep the Mothership Core at the back of the base and then the Zealot Stalker at the front to help pick off and deal with Marines. Either one's fine as long as you have some intelligent positioning to you. Single sentry, not much else. Ordinarily, we would see an instant observer, but no instant robo bay to get that started as fast as possible. And this is a game where I don't think this did much damage. Yeah, didn't really do much direct damage, but you heard me describe this beautiful little Oracle in a very specific way earlier on. It's good at keeping the opponent back while we get up Colossus. Well, if we take a look at de Muslim's main base, he's thrown up turrets here. He's keeping a lot of his Marines back in the main base. Even though, I mean, this shows it well enough. Nothing has been killed. I actually don't even think the Muslims really lost anything. Oh, yeah. It looks like a single Marine or something like that. Oh, I guess that was the Reaper, yeah. It's like basically no direct damage, but this is fine. Even if you can't deal any direct damage, just getting the continued revelations on the units is fine enough. We have bought ourselves Colossus time. 2 observers are all that will be built, and that is an extremely specific number. 2 observers out. 1 to just check out what's up and to do some monitoring, and then another observer that can be used at the front, can be used at the backside. An additional 2 gateways. Pretty typical looking structure. So we're seeing why this early robo facility is so important. For any of you who didn't know, 10 minutes is the most common time for an attack to hit the front. 9:30 if you're up against a super mega Gosu. So of course, you want to make sure that you have your basic ground defense up by then. So that's why we see that happening so quickly. This can potentially delay that a little bit. But still, Chrono Boost being focused here and not here. You'll see no Chrono Boost icon. You will soon enough see a Chrono Boost icon. Alright, nice. Why also the Phoenix research here? Phoenixes now make sense because, as we can see, the attack is moving out. Where are the medevacs? I know they're somewhere here. Ah, look at me, I found them. These Phoenixes are only starting to get produced as the first Colossus is out. So we can see the way that Minigun wiggled and wormed his way to the 10-minute mark to be able to begin this mix. Mothership Core, Stalkers to be able to defend the early attacks, Oracle to deal little damage, check out what's up, and to delay those attacks. Finally, the Colossus to deal with attacks at the front, the Phoenix to defray attacks at the back. It's fine that Minigun only has 2 observers, one at the front, or one at his opponent's front and one at his own front, because these Phoenixes act like, you know, surrogate observers. But they can even do damage. So this timing is quite nice. And some pretty typical 3 gateway play at the front. Colossus to be able to deal with that. Chrono Boosts are like so easy with this style. All you do is Chrono Boost Phoenixes and Colossus. Get it? Easy peasy. Makes total sensey. Great. This is all good. This is all well and good. We're zooming forward a bit. You're also noticing a distinct lack of forges coming up for Minigun. I think that maybe right around now would be a reasonable time to start a forge. Maybe a single forge. This gas count is deceptive because immediately we're going to be burning 200 here, and immediately we're going to be burning 100 here. We're burning 100 every 30 seconds. That's basically an entire geyser is devoted to this. Actually, an entire 2 geysers are devoted to this Stargate's worth of production. An entire 1 geyser is devoted to the production of the Colossus. Is that right? No. This is just, yeah, this Stargate and this Robo consume pretty much like 80% of the gas gathered from this many geysers. So that's one of the reasons why we're not seeing a ton of forges. Now here we're actually going to see one of the strengths of this Phoenix play. We're going to note this strength because later on we're going to see precisely what a weakness of this is. A strength is concentrated drops. When there's a big drop with a lot of medevacs. Because in concentrated drops, what these Phoenixes do is they put a time limit on this. Notice how there is no large pressure at the front. There's no multi-prongedness of attack. There's only a single prong that will get cleaned up very cleanly and succinctly by a bunch of Phoenixes. Nice. And this is one of the dream scenarios for a Colossus Phoenixing player. Minigun is going to get his extra base up, but he's going to go back to chilling. I will remind you that at this point in time, Minigun has only applied pressure with this Oracle. He has only defended with the rest of everything else, which is fine. So how the hell does this mixture begin to be aggressive. Upon the killing off of a whole lot of medevacs, this is when the Phoenixes can actually begin to be aggressive, and this is where we see a lot of value. This friendly observer has been doing a lot of spotting at the front. Killing off stuff down here is like totally easy and effective and great. I even think this style could be made much stronger by just planting pylons here and here as these Phoenixes are moving out. But again, it's very straightforward. Chrono's being spent on the Stargate and on the Colossus. And right now, I will broadly state that the biggest weakness of this style has been defended. I mean, this Oracle doing stuff, that's fine, but we're seeing Muslim in a passive mode. Right as the third base gets up and running, we see Minigun happily getting a +1 air weapons. That's great. Getting his 1/1 upgrades, continuing to get Colossus. Still no Templar, still no Charge, still no Blink, still nothing. Just Colossus and Phoenix for the most part. And this game's going to be fairly straightforward from here on out. Just a lot of defending, concentrated force. And in fact, if we look at this game, I haven't showed you the next game, but we're going to see a game where Minigun gets defeated pretty handily by Teja and by Alive. This is the look that we see. We see barracks and then double reactored starport. So this look from Muslim appears to be the same, but look at this, 16 minutes. Look at the defense that Minigun has. It's a very easy defense. It's not multi-pronged. Most Terran players actually feel discouraged. They think, well, gosh, I don't want to send a medevac drop here, because then you'll just kill off the medevac drop with the Phoenixes. So we see Terran players tend to stay together, and then when the Phoenixes do engage these Vikings, the Colossus deal a buttload of damage, and a buttload is more than enough to pretty much repel any Terran army. Anytime the Vikings get a little overeager, we see Minigun controlling very, very nicely. And then from here on out, I'd say this is the standard rounding out of the composition. Getting charge, getting these armor and attack. Notice that we don't actually need blink because our Phoenixes operate as a more effective blink. And then I think I have the ability to just X8 our way through the whole replay. Expanding, expanding, defending, playing steady, playing stable, getting Archons, cool. Why Archons? Because our opponent is just rarely going to have ghosts. Most of the time our opponent will be flooding Vikings to deal with our massive air mixture. So we'll be able to hurt him good. I don't think this game lasts that much longer. I personally don't really have that many more thoughts on it, so I will just zoom ahead. We can see the structure, we can see why it's strong, where it's strong, in what way it is strong. And we'll see it be awesome. You know what, I'm just going to be zooming ahead. All right, look, I'm going to open this up. I'm going to drag to the very end just so you can see. Because, you know, StarCraft players are a lot like fans of Supernatural. They literally could not handle if they didn't see the final season. They would actually all blow their brains out. So we wound up hitting just to the GG, so I'll back up just a smidge because it's not useful for you to just see the words GG typed on a black screen. But, this text is old. But by slowly wiggling and worming our way forward, we kind of have an unusual mix. It's a death ball from Protoss. It's an actual death ball. There hasn't really been a lot of harassment. Most of these worker kills are in, like, big direct engagements. There was some harassment that occurred here from this pylon, but Minigun is not doing the Rain-esque or the First-esque style of lots of counterattacking pylons. It's just hold and hold and hold and defend, keeping up our Colossus count thanks to our extremely high Phoenix count, and then winning in the ultra-late game with 3-3. So this is going to conclude part 1 of this 2-part daily, where what we've seen is what the Phoenix build is, and why it's strong, and what these timings are. So to recap, we got the chance to see that the Stargate comes out quite early to use this Oracle harassment. But we have to get kind of a swift robo, and then immediately after a super swift robo bay, so we can get the Colossus out, because that Colossus arrived right when Muslim would want to attack. at the front. And the Phoenixes start production right when the medevacs are going to be popping out at around 9:30. So these timings align right with standard Terran aggression. And then we saw one of the biggest strengths of this style, which is, hey, if you try to go for a big drop, you better either win with that drop or you're going to lose everything you have. And that's what we saw Minigun do super effectively against Muslim's 3 medevac drop. The Phoenixes just put a clock on it. This attack will end very, very soon. So that was sweet. However, we did see that Minigun was unable to qualify. He lost to the 2 Korean Terrans, who just did magnificent manipulations of this style. I was even talking about this with Frodan during the cast, that if you have an unusual style in a tournament, you know, sure, you get the opportunity to surprise your opponents. And very often your opponents will not know the timings of how to exploit you. And very often your opponents will stay back and try to build up the perfect composition like we saw the Muslim do. And that's exactly what Minigun wants, and that's exactly how he wins. But if you are very clever about it in the way Teja and Minigun are, this style can be easily picked apart with some nice aggression and an unusual frequency of drops. So stay tuned, because part 2 of this 2-part daily is coming up after this short break.